Next, I want to discuss how we can configure Visual Studio to work with Unreal Engine 5, and also how to set our IDE in the Unreal Editor. To get started, we have this, that is the toolbar, and we can have multiple toolbars. So for example, if I right click, we can select to have the text editor, for example, and then we can have the comment and uncomment buttons and so forth. And with each one of those, notice that you have a drop down right at the edge of that. So I'll just go and turn off the text editor again. Notice we have this drop down, and then we can add or remove buttons. If the solution configurations and or the solution platform buttons are not checked and don't show up for you, you can add them to the toolbar here. If you have one of these drop downs, for example, and you don't know what that is, you can just hover over that and the tooltip will tell you what that is. So I have the solution configurations, the solution platforms, the startup projects, and so on. For example, if you don't want there's a startup projects to show, what we can do is we can go and turn that off, startup projects, and then that will go away. And I'll just go and bring back the text editor. You have this handle between those now, that a vertical bar basically. Now we can drag that around. Okay, then you click this drop down again, and you get the options that are hidden basically before you get add or remove buttons. And you can also drag that down into a new section within the toolbar. I'll just bring that back up. Why am I mentioning this? Well, because we have this drop down right here, the solution configurations, and notice that it doesn't show the full thing. So if you select debug game editor, for example, it doesn't show the full thing. So we want to modify that. Now, what is the solution configuration and what are the differences between these? I will discuss these briefly before continuing on. The Unreal Engine uses a custom building method. We will discuss this in a bit more detail as we go along. So we need to select a configuration. You will notice that in some instances we have two keywords. The first keyword indicates the state of the engine and your game project. For example, if the first keyword in the configuration is debug, you will be able to debug your game's code. The second keyword is going to indicate the target that you are building for. For example, if you want to open the project in the Unreal Editor, then you need to build with the editor target keyword. That is an easy way to remember this. The debug configuration is going to contain symbols for debugging. For example, if you choose the debug game configuration, that is going to build the engine and optimize the engine, but it's going to leave the game code debuggable. So that configuration is ideal if you want to debug your game. And as a beginner, that is likely the option that you will choose. You will not be debugging the engine code. So this is another way to think about it. If you want to debug your game or project, then select debug game. Otherwise, you're going to select development editor, because development editor, that configuration is going to enable all but the most time-consuming engine and game code optimizations. This is ideal for development purposes because you're taking performance into consideration. Again, think of it in this way. It's only in the case where you actually want to debug your game where you will choose debug game. Otherwise, it's best for performance reasons to choose development editor. Again, are you developing or are you debugging? Okay, you can choose between those. And some of the other ones we may discuss in the future. But the shipping configuration, as an example, will be optimal for shipping your game or project. It's going to strip out console commands and profiling tools and really optimize your project. Alright, so we'll just continue and we will select development editor and Win64. I'll just continue here. We want to make this control a bit wider so we can see the entire string, such as debug game editor or development editor, for example, so that it is easy to see at a glance what we have selected. We may even make this one a bit smaller. My toolbar might look a bit different than yours. That's because I have changed some of those settings and have added and removed certain buttons. Alright, now what we can do is we can go and configure that solution configuration control. What we can do is we can right click and then we can go to customize. And then we can go over to commands. And we want to select the toolbar. And then we want to select the standard toolbar because this again here is the standard toolbar. If you hover over that, it will tell you what toolbar that is. So we have the text editor toolbar and we have the standard toolbar. Okay, so again, customize, commands, toolbar, and we want to select the standard toolbar, for example. And for the solution configuration, we want to modify that. I will set the width of that to something like 200. Click OK. Notice that now we can see the full string here, development editor, for example. For solution platforms, I will modify that as well. Maybe set that to something like 80. That should be fine. You can always change that later since you know how to do that now. That should take effect immediately so we don't have to save anything. And I'll just click close. I will move the text editor toolbar to the right. Notice that I have this start without debugging, the text is showing up. Typically that's only a small button because you can configure that. So I'll go to Customize, Commands, Toolbar, Standard again. Scroll down to Start without debugging. You can modify that to only show, for example, the default style. Click OK. Notice that you only get a small button now. Or text only in menus, or image and text. And I'll select image and text. Click OK. And that is what we get. If you want that to have a similar setup as what you have already, then you can select debug target, for example, modify selection, and now you can say, okay, this is set to image and text. And then you can go and set this one here to image and text as well, stuff like that. Because you can look at what you have set up already and then make your modifications according to that. I showed you the long way of doing this. You can right click on here, go to Customize, click on Commands, click on the particular toolbar, and so on. Now there's a shorter way because you might have noticed if I click on this drop down here, click on Add or Remove buttons, then we have the Customize down here. Okay, under Commands we have Toolbar, then we already have the standard toolbar selected. Then I can simply scroll down, select the controls such as the solution configurations, and then modify that. Same thing here with the text, we have the text editor toolbar down here. Click on that. Add or remove buttons and then click Customize. Then you can see the toolbar is already selected in the command section. So that is a quick way of doing that. But in this way you can go ahead and find that and customize whichever toolbar you want. Alright. So I just wanted to demonstrate that. Now there are a few more things. So for example, the error list, you can go ahead and turn that off when you are developing with Unreal Engine because sometimes it shows false positives. In other words, false error messages. And we don't really have to see that because in the output window it's going to show you the actual errors, so the real code errors. So we can disable that. I'll just go here to Tools, Options, under Projects and Solutions. Then you can uncheck this, always show error list if build finishes with errors. I'll just click on Cancel here. These are only some of the configurations that I'd like to mention in Visual Studio for right now. I will link you to a page on the Unreal Engine 5 documentation, which will list a couple of more options that you can decide if you want to set those or not. At this point, you may want to build and run a project, so start without debugging or Control F5, okay, something like that. And you may get an error. Now I've actually deliberately made some changes here. For example, in the Solution Explorer, you can see the UE5 project is bold now and not the CPP Experiments project. That's because I've modified the Unreal Engine 5 project to be the starter project. We can define or set the starter project by right-clicking on the project. So in this case, CPP Experiments, I'll right-click on that. And we have the option Set as Starter Project. It has a little cog here or gear to the left. So I'll left-click on that and notice that the CPP Experiments project is now bolded. And now if I start without debugging or Control F5, that should work fine. That should work fine, build succeeded, and it should now run. And the point with this demonstration is just to make sure to set the starter project properly. That is in the case where you get an error when you try to build and run that. The chances are that it will be set properly, so your project will be set as the starter project. But again, in the case where you get an error, that is where you can go and check. One final thing to wrap up this lecture, I would like to demonstrate how we can define or set our preferred source code editor. We can do that by going to Edit and then Editor Preferences. I will go ahead and dock that. Then under the source code section, we can define the editor that we want to use. So for example, you can select Visual Studio 2022. If you have something else that you want to select, such as Visual Studio Code, for example, that is fine. Go ahead and define what your preferred editor is, and then simply click Restart. And with that, we are going to wrap up this lecture. I will see you next time.